E-telligence. Energizing your email marketing with Kate Barrett.
Welcome to this month's E-telligence Creative Review. Today we're going to be looking at an email from the White Company. So this email was received just before the summer in May, and it breaks down 3 outfits for holiday mode, which I absolutely love. And the thing for me here is that they do something I don't see a lot of emails doing, which is telling a story through their content. So the main premise of the email is about going into holiday mode, planning that long weekend and what you're going to wear. So they literally take you through that from day 1 to day 2 to day 3. And I think that that is a really fantastic way to lay out different product options in a way that inspires and helps your audience. What do you think, Elliot?
Yeah, I really like it. I think the idea of pulling through, having a bit of narrative through the email is really strong, because if you don't do that, it's very easy to just end up with hey, here's some products and thanks. So quite obviously a lot of the time in email we're trying to send basically products for people to buy, so having a bit of a story that brings people in is, I think, a great thing.
Excellent. And then obviously we've got, as we move through that story, we've also got additional products that again make sense with the story that they're telling. So beach ready towels and the children's wear, but they bring that imagery into for small suitcases. So everything is in line with the story, which really works.
Yeah, and I think the White Company are good. They've got a good kind of mix of products to line that up, right? It's good they have the Little White Company and that kind of stuff, and it is definitely it's one of those brands that I think they're kind of somewhat aspirational, I suppose, but they're one of those brands that people like a lot more than perhaps other more utility brands. So I think that kind of they've already got a bit of a head start in getting a decent story and getting some kind of secondary stuff in there as well that supports it.
Definitely. And I think that they are using some dynamic content based on previous behavior here. So I've got to put my hand up and say I'm a big White Company fan, particularly the Little White Company. So I buy quite a few things from there for my little boy. And in the You May Also Like section that we've got at the bottom of that email, we are seeing a lot of baby products coming through. So I'm guessing that it's based on what I've searched for before, or what I've perhaps looked at, or just associated items, because I definitely haven't looked at a gift set, for example, because I don't need to buy a gift set, but it's certainly in the realm of other things that I have searched for before on their website and viewed.
Yeah, and I think these kind of things, they can happen in a few different ways, right? So we're looking at this in the inbox, and so this bit is made of images, but there's a couple of ways that this can happen. So it could be that at the ESP that they've managed to get that data so that you are interested in this, and it's come all the way through to the ESP, and they've managed to segregate content on that, or segment content based on that. But there are also third parties where you put in a sort of code snippet, and then that links back to their kind of website record of who you are and what you like. So it could be either of those ways that's happened, but it's interesting to see that kind of almost retargeting being pulled through into an email.
Definitely. And I think that this is really good, because if you don't find something within the email that's caught your attention, then it gives you a link into something that you've done before that may be more likely to capture your attention and get you to actually take that action and move through. But in the same sense, I almost wonder if they need some You May Also Likes that are more associated with the story. I think that would be a really interesting testing point, whether you keep it as it is based on browse behavior, for example, or if you bring in some other products around that summer theme. That could be a really interesting test there.
Yeah, I think that's true. The other kind of benefit there as well is, I think Was it you mentioned this? I saw a talk recently. I think it was you, maybe you mentioned it, but just kind of dialing back the you may also like, and throwing in some things that are perhaps not entirely driven by data, just to kind of give it a bit of sort of it looks less scary, less stalkery. Like, here's the last 4 things you looked at on our website, and more like, oh, here's some stuff you might like, and oh, by the way, it's just a miraculous coincidence that it's within the same realm of stuff we know you've been looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that came from the Target example. So if any of you watching haven't found out about the Target example yet, definitely go and Google it, because what happened was Target did a load of analysis on their data to find out about specific products that women were buying at various stages of their pregnancy. And through that analysis, they found that there were certain products that they could then predict where a woman was in terms of first trimester, second trimester. So they then use that to send out emails saying, oh, hey, you may like this. But what it did was, it was actually too creepy. So they were kind of predicting that somebody was pregnant before they'd even had a chance to tell family, friends, colleagues, before they'd even gone that far. So it was too far. It was over the line creepy. So what they did was, they still used that data that they had, but they pulled it back a little bit. So they recommended products, but they mixed them in with other products that you wouldn't necessarily buy during pregnancy, just so that it wasn't so overtly obvious. And I think we do have to watch how we walk that line between personalized and creepy, and find the right balance between there.
Yeah, exactly. I think that also gives everyone enough plausible deniability. So if that email falls in the wrong hands or whatever, then it's not obvious that you were buying a gift for someone, or that you were pregnant and you hadn't told someone, or anything like that. So definitely. I think that there's definitely some sort of business rules to consider there with that kind of stuff. Yeah,
quite an extreme example with Target, yes. But I think it illustrates that you do have to be careful with personalization. And I also think that, and we see this time and time again, right? So the content in this email isn't something I've necessarily been searching for online, but it's inspirational. It's showing me something that I may not have even thought that I would like. So I'm all for personalization, and I think that brands need to do a lot more personalization in emails, but there is also that place still for inspiration and showing people what they don't even know that they like. And this is where advertising started, right? So on children's TV, in between the programs on a Saturday morning, putting adverts out for toys and things like that to get that bug factor for children to then go and ask their parents for it. This is where it started, that those children don't need those products. They didn't even know that they wanted them, and they probably don't even want them. It's just that they've seen a cool advert for it. So, that exactly. Inspiration and fun is definitely something that you want to bring in. And I really love the way that the White Company have done that and mixed the inspiration with the data-based personalization based on previous browse behavior.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a good mix of stuff going on there. The sort of yin and the yang.
What I also love about this email is that at the top and at the bottom, we've got menus. So if you don't see something that you like in the email, and I know we've talked about this before in previous creative reviews, you've got those key categories at the top of the email. But if you get to the bottom and haven't seen anything, you've got a different sub-menu, a recovery module at the bottom. So we've got help, your account, gifting services, contact us, our stores, and brochure request. So a different menu that comes in at the bottom. Now, I think that is something that is really useful, and I've definitely seen brands use recovery modules in different ways, but here they're using it as more of that account searching, helpful way of presenting the information, which I really like.
Yeah, and I think quite often an email is a good reminder for some of that stuff, right? Like, if you've moved house or something like that, an email's just a reminder for like, oh, hey, by the way, remember we exist and we have a relationship, and by the way, change your address, or anything that kind of admin side of things. It's good just to give people a nudge with that kind of stuff. So I think that's good there, and it's the right kind of place for it as well.
Yeah, and the right size. It's not taking away from the main content. It's not fighting with the main content for that call to action. So I think that's really brilliant. And of course, we've got the mop-ups at the end of the gift of choice and the little white company where you've got those more general calls to action. Although it would be really interesting to see the stats from this email, to see how many people actually clicked on those more general calls to action rather than those further up in the email. I think that would be really interesting to find out.
Yeah, well, that's the endless debate, isn't it? If it doesn't get enough clicks, then it's not worth being there. If it gets too many, then the email's not the right content. So it's a fine line getting that stuff right.
It is, absolutely. And then if we have a look as we go down the email, so you've got from the very top, you've got the perfect inverted triangle with your headline, your main copy, and then your call to action. That is absolutely perfectly executed at the top of the email there, so that in the preview pane, without scrolling down, without going to anything else, people know what it is that you're offering them, and they've got a call to action button right there that they can click on. So I love how they've done that. But as we go down the email, although I love the content, on day 1, day 2, day 3, there's no call to action in this email for me to get through to those products. Now, I'm going to show you the mobile version in just a minute and we'll talk about that. But on the desktop, I believe that this is just one image.
Oh, okay, yeah, so that's not going to be great if people have images turned off or they're on a bad internet connection, that kind of stuff. It's probably going to be quite hard to see some of that content.
So the image is in as one image, and if you click on it, it only takes you to one of the products. The headings are also in as an image, which they could have easily been put in as text. So that would be nice to see those headlines as text. So if you're thinking about accessibility, if somebody's on a screen reader, or if somebody has they're on a train and their internet connection isn't great and the images aren't loading up, those headings and those images are going to disappear. The good thing is the text underneath each one is in as text, but you're kind of missing the subheading then, which is a shame.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? Because obviously the email's driven so much by product imagery. Like, it's going to be hard to get the gist of the email just from the text, but still, there's maybe a bit more work that they could do there. Yeah, I guess perhaps it could link through to like a category. Quite often on e-commerce sites, you can kind of group together a whole bunch of products. So all of these kind of holiday products could be in a sort of category or a landing page that they could send people through to. So yes, there's maybe a little bit more that it could do, but also everything in marketing is a balance of what you can do versus, you know, what's good versus great, and what you can do versus what's going to be impossible to do. So yeah, you know, I'm sure they sent this and it got some results for them, so it's all good.
Absolutely. And what's worthwhile to do, I think that's a really good point. So, you know, we're saying that you could create a landing page that's got, you know, that top, those trousers, that jewelry, those shoes, but is it worthwhile them doing that? So I think you've always got to weigh up what the return is on that effort. And I also think that probably the reason that they've put the headings or the subheadings in as images is probably to do with the font, and wanting to keep that brand font on there. So again, there's that trade-off sometimes between accessibility, between what would be really good, like you say, in terms of how people are going to interact with the email, and in terms of branding versus how you actually build it. So I think this email looks absolutely fantastic, don't get me wrong, but it's just interesting to start to think about those really tiny nuances and what you could do in those areas.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's interesting seeing this bit at the bottom as well. There's a kind of bit of text that says, remember, as an email subscriber, you receive 15% off full-priced items when you spend £75, all that kind of stuff. So that looks interesting because perhaps that's been sort of inserted via custom publishing or something like that, sort of in the ESP. But it looks, so to your point about sort of typography and fonts and things, so that's looks like it's just in Times New Roman and it's been added kind of at the last minute, or, you know, even in the ESP process. So it's that kind of goes against the idea of the rest of the email being fairly image driven so that they can keep the right fonts. So not quite sure what's going on there. That could perhaps either be executed a bit better, or or maybe it's sort of been put in and they haven't seen it in their testing process or something like that.
Yeah,
just maybe a bit of work they could do there.
because it is a weird font. But do you know what? I'm absolutely an avid fan of the White Company. So I look at their emails all the time, and it's not until you and I have started talking now that I've even actually read that and realised that I could have been getting 15% off of full price items when I spent £75. So again, maybe there's something there in terms of calling it out, of being something that is exclusive to email subscribers. Maybe that would be better as a banner at the top of the email, or just again maybe putting some kind of shaded box behind it so that it really calls that out as a message, because as an email subscriber, that's a big exclusive that I've missed out on because I haven't seen it. So maybe I haven't got to the bottom of the emails to see that content. Maybe I just haven't, because it's not in the rest of the design. It's very different from the design. It actually hasn't stood out to me, but I am definitely a fan, and I have not noticed that message before. So definitely something that perhaps could be looked at there and called out a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're paying, well, not paying money, but they're giving up margin for that, right? Like, they're giving you 50% off, so that's coming out of their margin that they're making. So they should make that work.
15%, not 50%. I think 50%. I would jump at that, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so 15% off. Yeah, but they, they're giving that away, so they should make it work as hard as they possibly can to get value and loyalty from the subscriber, really.
Definitely. It seems kind of hidden at not hidden, but it's at the bottom of the email. So I would definitely call that out. That makes me feel special as a subscriber. So I would definitely do something a little bit more with that. And I would definitely test the placement of call to action buttons. So we've got the shop now at the top, the shop towels, the shop children's, but they're all in the images. And then the day 1, day 2, day 3, there aren't any visible call to action links. It's relying on the subscriber to know that they click on the link, which most do, but I do think that you have to make things overtly obvious. The same with the you may also like. I'd love to see that tested with bulletproof buttons underneath each product, with a text link underneath each product, or just having some kind of, even if it is on the image, some kind of perhaps arrow or call to action or something that makes it really obvious to click on each of those, and to see what that does to the click-through rate as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot of space to experiment there, so I think they could do a lot of work there. Excellent. So you mentioned on mobile that it looks different.
It does. Now this is why I've pulled this one up as an example, because what they've done is made it interactive on a mobile. So what you can see here is that as you scroll down the email on a mobile device, each of these day 1, day 2, day 3 actually is interactive. And what I will say is that if you click on the view in browser link when you're on your webmail or your desktop, and it takes you to the landing page to view the email rather than viewing it in your email client, it's interactive on the landing page as well. So on the landing page and in a mobile device, you've got these interactive hotspots that when you finger over them or mouse over them, it tells you what the product is that you're looking at and gives you a direct link through to this product, which I just think is absolutely fantastic. And in terms of making it easy for a user to direct straight through to those products, you can't get better than that. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that looks really cool. And yeah, maybe to the kind of point about just on the desktop where it just clicks through to just one product or whatever, then this would answer that, right? So you can absolutely click on a given product in that kind of photo shoot and it takes you straight through to the page that's about. It's interesting that it's on mobile. So on mobile, part of the challenge there is you need to sort of tap on the hotspot, because there isn't really a hover as such, in the same way that you can hover with a mouse on the desktop. So I guess you have to tap a plus one and then it kind of box will show up. That's interesting. I think it's pretty cool execution of something there. Be interesting to hear what the results were like and whether it worked for them. Often this kind of stuff, it's the balance of how much effort it is to build versus any extra uplift you get from it. So yeah, it's always a good test, I find, with these things, like how often a brand sticks with it. Like quite often they sort of try it once or a few times and then they sort of dip their toe in and then that's it for a little while. So yeah, be interesting to see how many of these over the sort of course of the year that get sent out.
Definitely. So if anyone from the White Company is watching, please do get in touch with us and let us know how this one worked for you. And if you've got any other examples like this that you've been using, definitely, interactivity in email is the buzzword at the moment. But I did a recent podcast episode with Jay Oram from Action Rocket, your company, Elliot, and he was talking about how interactive email doesn't have to be hard. There are lots of elements like carousels and things like that you can put into your emails that help people to interact with the content easier and within the email, but they can be done just with a really clever piece of code in your email. So you don't necessarily need a third-party provider. If you've got the right coder, the right developer doing this for you, then you can bring those elements in. So it's definitely worth exploring whether or not interactivity could help you to achieve the objective that you have with your email, and that is absolutely key.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other example they've got here is there's this sort of hamburger navigation at the top of the email. So that's maybe another example of interactive where it's perhaps worth the investment because it's going to be something you're just going to reuse over and over. So yeah, there's kind of different levels. You can kind of maybe build a bit of navigation that you sort of tap into, and that's in every email, and that kind of justifies the work and the effort kind of building it and testing it. And then there's kind of stuff that goes into an individual campaign that is maybe a little bit more one-off, but there's ways to execute that are fairly straightforward.
So the other interesting thing on the mobile is that they've taken out that top menu that we saw on the webmail or desktop version, and they've just switched it for, can you see that little person icon next to the logo on the right-hand side? So that links through to the account. So they've taken away that top menu. They've left the options that we were talking about right at the bottom of the email. Those are still in on a mobile version. But I think it's interesting that they've changed it for an account call to action at the top of this one rather than a drop down, as well as the drop down menu, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, quite often on mobile you do have like the screen space is at a premium, so it's quite common to take out navigation or maybe move it to the bottom or hide it behind some navigation, like an interactive element, so that you get to the key offer quickly without having to just kind of scroll down. So I can see why they've done that. It's interesting as well, just hiding all the account stuff behind that little account icon. Like I think that's quite like you see that quite commonplace in sort of apps and in the sort of phone interface itself. So it's quite interesting to pull that through into email. You don't see that as often.
Yeah, I think that's really clever. And I think that you do associate that little person icon with your account. And obviously you've got the hamburger menu. So I think that the use of that space at the top of the email has been really cleverly done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it works really well on mobile.
Excellent. So overall, I absolutely love this email. I'd love to hear from the White Company to see how this performed. So yeah, if you're watching, please do get in touch. But Elliot, have you got any final thoughts for us?
No, I think it's a good email, and I think it'd be interesting to hear how it went, and whether the interactive stuff worked out for them. Really, I think it's a really nice example of some fairly straightforward interactive stuff, and also really nice appealing product shots that are done in a much nicer way than just a sort of standard grid of here's 12 disparate products. I think it's executed really well here.
Yeah, I love the inspiration of how to put it all together, because that's definitely something that I struggle with. So Thank you, White Company. Much appreciated.